You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Echo a Mano. This episode is Becca Grady. Rebecca is a multidisciplinary artist, and we show her jewelry work at Echo a Mano. And she also has a painting exhibition over at Show Pony Gallery on view through August 30th. There's a couple events coming up in conjunction with that show. Visit showponygallery.com for events and times. There's a little bit of extra reverb on this one, so apologies for the audio. We've got some audio improvements coming your way. Stay tuned. A few things I want to plug. There's a ton of Indian market events this weekend, as you know, but wanted to give a shout out to the Ancestral Ink Indigenous Tattoo Symposium at the Santa Fe Art Institute. That's Sunday, August 18th. It's free, but you must register at sfai.org/ancestral-ink. Also want to give a shout to Paula Wilson and Mira Burak at 516 Arts in Albuquerque, on view through August 31st. It's a great show. I also wanted to give a shout to Perceived Value podcast, hosted by Sarah Rachel Brown. I just discovered her podcast today. She talks with artists just about how to make it work as an artist, how to make a living, and she doesn't shy away from talking about money, which is usually not out in the open. So I think a lot of listeners might find it really helpful. She mostly focuses on jewelry artists, but I think a lot of others would appreciate it as well. The most recent episode I could really relate to, it's with Viviana Langhoff of Adornment and Theory Gallery in Chicago. They're a jewelry gallery, or rather, she prefers not to call it a gallery, a shop, a jewelry shop in Chicago that's a little over a year old. So I could really relate to the way she was talking about being a gallery startup. All right, thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in the gallery soon.
All of this.
It's shrouded.
It's like crazy, and you have to pay attention.
And people don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think in most businesses and professions, people don't talk about what they're being paid.
Yeah.
I guess we can start. We'll just dive right in. I was looking at, by the way, thank you for being here and doing this.
Of course.
If you can sit a little closer, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Can you see like what the levels are? If that's okay.
Yeah.
And also, I'll put this in the ground so it's not.
Yeah, I think that's good. There was this public spreadsheet that I saw where like museum and gallery people were inputting their salaries.
Oh, I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yep.
Fascinating.
Yep.
I thought it was so cool to just be like, okay, this is something that is generally hidden from everybody, and who does it benefit to like keep that stuff secret? You know, the salaries and like how much men were making and how much women were making and the directors and the et cetera, et cetera. It was a trip to see that. So cool.
Yeah, and also sad.
Right. But like cool that the transparency is that kind of,
that's nice. But it's also, it's not the museums, they're not providing the transparency. It's like employees.
No, right.
The city of Chicago, like, let's see, maybe 10 years ago, made it all transparent, and you can look up anyone's salary. I think there might be a handful of positions that are protected, but in general, like you can actually look up I don't know, I don't remember exactly why that came up, but they were having issues.
Yeah.
I mean, they have lots of issues.
Yeah. We as a world have a lot of issues. Cool. Well, thanks for being here. I wanted to start by talking about Alaska because I don't think we already had this conversation. I spent my first 7 years in Anchorage
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you were born in Anchorage, or?
Palmer.
You were in Palmer.
We lived in Chugiak. That's where my parents met.
Oh wow. Where? I don't even know where that is. I know
really
Palmer.
Tiny. Yeah, I think it's like right next door. It's not that far. But yeah, my dad was a pilot, and so he was flying cargo planes out of Anchorage, and my mom was working in a clinic, and so they met because he came into the clinic one time.
Wow.
But yeah, and they built a house out there, and then had me, and then we lived there until I think I was almost 2, and my dad, I forget which order this happened, but I think my mom got into PA school in New Orleans. And then on the way there, my dad got a job for America West, so he was going to be based out of Phoenix. So we moved to the opposite side of the country.
Oh wow! So you moved to Phoenix or New Orleans?
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
And then we lived outside of Phoenix. We also lived in Tijuana for like a year because my mom was working in a clinic in the mountains. We basically moved around until I started kindergarten.
Yeah.
Like, every year. And then my parents had 2 more kids. They're like, okay, we'll just stay in Maine.
Wow.
Like, stay put. They're still there.
Yeah, I was born in Ponca City, Oklahoma, and I left when I was 6 months old.
Yeah.
Moved to Anchorage. So I was like, I didn't spend any time there. After going back, no offense to anybody that's from there, I'm glad I didn't grow up in Ponca City, Oklahoma. It's like, it's a tiny, tiny little town.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, I don't think I would have fit in at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked where we grew up in Maine, but my parents sold the house when I was like 10, I think. And so I went back with my dad, and I was so upset because all of the schools in Alaska have skating rinks. And there are like no skating rinks in Maine. I was really into skating at that point.
They don't ice skate in Maine?
They do, but it's like there's like a pond, so there's like really limited time that you can. There's like one pond in Kennebunk that's really limited time that you can skate on it. Although now there's a skating rink that my sisters, I have like 2 little kid sisters, so they get to go all the time now. But no, there was one barn that used to, a couple towns over, that would flood the barn, and then that was like the closest place to go skating.
Flood the barn for skating rink. That's awesome. That's great.
I think a few people like rigged up backyard ones where you like build a tent and then flood it in the winter. But
yeah, I remember my dad did that one year in the lawn, like kind of dug out the lawn a little bit.
Yeah.
Just ran the hose. But we had a river right behind our house that would freeze, so we would just skate down the river, which was kind of like, I don't know, that's really cool to think about that, you know, living here now, because it's like hiking, except you're on skates.
Yeah.
To skate down a river.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where did you go after that?
I was in Seattle.
Okay.
After Anchorage, was there for 8 years.
That seems like a relatively easy transition.
I think it was. I was 7.
From.
Yeah. I mean,
landscape-wise, I mean.
It was definitely different. I mean, Anchorage is, I don't know what the population was there. It's smaller as a city, and you're kind of like more sort of kind of cradled by the mountains there.
Yeah.
But I was 7 at the time, and it didn't feel like a rough transition, like with friends or anything, at least in my memory of it. I do have the experience of when my first year, they had like this giant snowstorm. It doesn't snow a lot in Seattle, but every once in a while they get like a big snowstorm, and they closed all the schools, and I was like, what? Why are they closing school? I mean, it's awesome, but like, why? I just didn't understand why they would close school for snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was fun. And so you landed in Maine when you were in kindergarten? Yeah, and you pretty much grew up there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, until I moved to Chicago for art school. So.
Did you get into, did your parents make art? Were they creatives or?
My mom did a lot of like watercolor painting, and she still does actually, but not for work. She was a physician's assistant for a long time and like does a lot of body work. And she would write sometimes. So like she was very into doing, creative projects.
Yeah.
But they also liked building stuff. Like so I wouldn't say they were like making art necessarily all the time, but like they built a house in Alaska and then they moved to Maine and they built a house in Maine, and then like when my parents got divorced, my mom built a little cabin for herself.
Yeah,
so
right.
We're very hands-on.
They were creating.
Yeah. And like my mom makes really cool like rock gardens, and she's always like just adding little things that she like finds here and there to the house.
Right.
So like a very creative house, but not in a way that like would tell you anything about how to make a living as an artist.
Sure.
They were just like, yes, you can go to art school, like do whatever you want.
Yeah. No, and I think it's like important to like honor that those types of things, like creation is creation.
Yeah.
Whether or not like you're making an object, right? To look at what it means to create in the world. Like everybody's creating something.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a bad attitude or building a house or whatever. Like, I mean, we're always in the process of putting energy into something, and to me that's creativity.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think that we can either be conscious of it or not conscious of it. So yeah, I think it's important to see that and to see the ways in which we funnel those energies. So that's great. So you're around your parents were creators.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And my dad was really into photography when he was younger, but he like never did it when we were growing up. But I've like found his old cameras and like some of his old prints and stuff, but he hasn't taken photos in years.
Yeah, that's interesting. I went to school for photography and I haven't done a lot of it since then.
Yeah.
So I always wonder, like, is that going to come back into my life or not? I don't know. But yeah, it's funny, those things that we leave behind. Yeah. And so did you discover art in high school, or did you kind of like, once you graduated, you were just like, ooh, I want to go to college for art?
No, I was planning on it the whole time.
Yeah.
It was always my favorite subject.
Nice.
I was like always writing and drawing and making weird female clay jewelry and beaded stuff.
Nice.
And then, I did like the honors art classes in high school. And then there was an apprenticeship program with a local jeweler. So, we had a jewelry class in high school because one of the art teachers was really into making jewelry and she had her own studio. So that's how I got started making jewelry. And then I also was doing a lot of sculpture.
So you got introduced to jewelry pretty early on. That's great.
Yeah, it was a good class. And then there was like a mother-daughter like jewelry studio in the town that I grew up in. So I did an apprenticeship with her, and a couple other people that I know are still making jewelry also did an apprenticeship with them.
Nice. Do you remember what the early things you were making look like?
How early?
Like, I don't know, your early jewelry pieces, what were you making in high school? What did it look like?
Oh, in high school?
Yeah.
Like wide overlapping silver bands with like some big cabs set in them. I was really into melting stuff. So like a lot of reticulated silver.
Nice.
Because I had one of the big plumbing torches. So it was just torch it.
Just melt it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that's cool that you got to, play with melting metals and things like that in high school. I always, I like to burn things, but it was never like in a sanctioned environment where it's like safe. So that's awesome. You had that opportunity.
I had some supervision in the beginning.
Yeah. And then when you went to from there, you went to Chicago?
Yeah, I went to the School of the Art Institute to do sculpture.
And what like sculpturally, what was drawing you at that time? Like, what was there a medium aside from jewelry, or was that part of the sculpture department?
The jewelry department, the metals department at the Art Institute was like non-existent. There were a couple classes, so I didn't even bother taking it. I was like, I'm not going to waste my time. I was like, I think I know how to do most of it. I mean, there's like looking back, I'm like, I could have learned a lot, but I was like, oh no, I already know how to do that. I'm going to take mold making and casting and like learn how to do stuff with latex. And I did a lot of ceramics. I was actually mostly in the ceramics department. and then like took a lot of classes in like the fiber arts department, and made, like I basically was like, I'm gonna take advantage of all the departments, and I had a studio space in the ceramics department, but then would take like techniques based like materials classes in some of the other departments.
Cool.
But mostly I wanted to learn how to do everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so.
But some of that probably still transfers over, like the mold making and casting, like.
Yeah, I don't do that on my own, because it's such, you really need a big setup for that, and you have to be doing enough of it. But I took a casting class for jewelry a couple of years ago, and that was super fun. So it's like nice. I mean, I like carving waxes. But so if I did more of that, it would make sense to rig it up. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I did very little of that. Because I did try to like take a variety of classes too. It was photography mostly, but I did, like the printmaking and the ceramics and, all the little things that are kind of part of the curriculum. So it was great to kind of play around and get those skills at the time. Yeah. And then, so did you find like there was a time where you were like, I'm done with sculpture, I want to move into jewelry? Was that transit? Were you always making jewelry through that process? I just made, I had my little creme brulee torch, and I didn't have a bench, but I would take, I think I borrowed the ceramic plates that you use in the kiln, and I was like, oh, I can just use this, I'll take that home with me. So I still made jewelry here and there. But yeah, no, I didn't stop. It was never one or the other. And then, so I made mostly sculpture and did a lot of text-based work, and would make jewelry just to wear and to give as gifts and make for my friends. And I didn't think about starting my own line until more of my friends were starting to get married, and I was getting requests to make wedding bands. And then I also was starting to think about how to turn some of my drawings into jewelry pieces. I was drawing a lot of icebergs. So it was making little mountainy shapes, and some wire work, but mostly cutout shapes. And it wasn't, and I didn't really think about actually doing my own jewelry until I could see some of those places where they overlap. But that sort of took a while. But I worked for jewelers in Philadelphia and Chicago, and got a lot of really good hand skills from that, just doing production work. So that was where I learned the most. That's
great, because it seems like you've sort of carried that multidisciplinary thing with you, right? Because I see you, making photographs, you have this show of paintings up right now, you're doing jewelry. I mean, it seems like that, maybe for me anyway, I find I like to jump around, and it's kind of I love starting things. Is that part of it for you? Is it more these different media have just different avenues of expression of different things, or?
Well, it's also partly why I went to school for sculpture, and I was I want to learn how to use all of the materials. I don't want to do the same thing every single day. I've always never wanted to do that. So I enjoy making jewelry, and I like designing stuff. I like taking photos for the jewelry. I like it's nice to zone out and just work on an order and listen to some podcasts. But I also want to always want to switch it up. And I did take a break from making art for a while, because I had a full-time job, and I was also trying to start my own jewelry business, and I just there were no other hours in the day. So I was so that was one sort of interesting place where I was trying to play around with storytelling and being more creative with shooting a lookbook. And but now that it's sort of more established, I'm I can sort of take a little pockets of time and try and work on paintings again, and work on some other projects. So
yeah. And did you went to grad school? Is that right?
Yeah, I went to UIC and did their studio arts program.
Studio arts?
Yeah, so I did a lot of sculpture and some photography, and I'm gonna make comics, or was making comics too. So made a lot of books. I've seen a lot of like giant paper sculptures. Actually, these are sort of these like little rock things that I started making. I was making back then, and when I was installing the painting show, I was like, I've never shown paintings before. I need to have an object. I have to just make a weird rock. It's like, you need to bring the rocks back in there.
Well, they're kind of grounding. I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of. But
that
like,
was exactly what I was like. There needs to be something on the floor.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can't, of course, can't see it, but there's a room with very dark paintings on the wall, and then these dark objects on the floor that look like rocks, and they're made out of paper. But I mean, it does like, I mean,
it's actually cinefoil.
What's that?
It's like aluminum foil that's covered with like matte. It's like a matte black coating, and it's what you use to put on lights to sort of darken them or focus the light.
So they're kind of a little rigid, like you couldn't just crumple them like with like paper.
Yeah, I mean, I crumpled it like paper, but it's just like if you took a roll of tin foil, but it's firmer.
Yeah.
Like I got it in a big roll and then assembled it.
Yeah, no, they're cool because I mean, typically when you're looking at a show of things on the wall, I mean, it's all like this, right? And then these things, it's like, oh, what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I want you to be able to look down and look up and have the contrast between the map and the light. And these paintings are all about light, so it's nice to also have a sculpture that's made out of something that's used to control light.
Yeah. Have you ever, you know, that material Vantablack, that stuff that's like, I forget, some company invented it and then like Anish Kapoor copyrighted it or something. Like he like owns the color. It's a weird
he owns
thing.
The color. Okay.
Yeah, it's like he owns the rights to produce whatever it is that this material is that makes this color. It's a really strange idea to own a color, but it's like, I mean, it looks really weird because like you have like a three-dimensional object that's coated with this material and it looks flat. I mean, there's just, it like reflects zero light. It's a really strange material.
Yeah, I think I've seen images, but I haven't seen it in real life. I don't know what it looks like in real life. But
yeah, but based on the images, it looks really weird.
Yeah.
Like a black hole.
Or like charcoal.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking of the same thing.
Yeah, it's just like...
It's been a while since I've looked at his work.
Absorbs all the light.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever worked with light itself?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, I like one of the, like my thesis show, I had an old like overhead projector that was just projecting light onto this like wall of crumpled paper. That was supposed to be a storm. And a shipwreck. So.
It was just projecting the light, or was it
just light?
Just
yeah.
Light? Yeah.
Yeah, I found this old overhead projector in the trash at Argonne National Laboratory, and it like said Argonne National Laboratory on it. I was like, oh, I'm taking this up.
Nice.
This will get used somehow. So.
Wow. I remember an Olafur Eliasson show that I saw where he was using like these lights that would just bathe the entire room in a single color. It's really intense and trippy. And
yeah.
I love thinking about how light itself can be a medium.
Yeah, he does a good job of that.
Yeah. Well, and then these, like, the paintings in the room are like, they have that relationship with it. And it's interesting to look at from certain angles, like, to get away from, like, the reflectiveness of the gloss and, like, kind of stepping to the side. Like, I have a different experience with them depending on which angle I'm looking at it and which way the light's hitting it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And they reveal different things. I mean, it seems like they're kind of about revealing, yeah? Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, with these, I started out thinking about them as, like, working with, like, trying to paint light. And then I also kept thinking about, like, adding, because I was also, like, in making them, I was adding a lot of layers of paint of the different colors. If I didn't like the color, I'd add more and then add the black around it to sort of like focus on part of it. But I also started thinking about the general climate crisis, because I make a lot of work about that, and in part, so it's partly about like thinking about like the things that won't be around, or the layers that we can't see. So like you can see like part of the light, but then there's like more there. We might never see that other side. And so I was trying to like layer on a lot of the paint, which is why I ended up doing the gloss. I like sealed it with a gloss varnish because I wanted it. You can actually see the all the either my hand marks or brush strokes, and like all the layers on each one, depending on where you're standing.
Right. No, I like that. I mean, I like that, you know, you can walk around them and it just, you get a totally different experience of them depending on how the light's hitting it. Yeah. I mean, because like the gloss, like when you get the light hitting it that way, I mean, it reveals the process more.
Yeah.
Right? You see your hand in it more. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of funny to decide to go with the gloss because everything else is like I do is matte. It's like flat drawing paper, or like trying to find a book place that will print a matte cover because I hate the glossy stuff, or like using the matte thing, and I put a matte finish on all the jewelry because I don't like it being shiny.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it's hammered.
Yeah, and then you see the like the hammer texture, and then like it'll get shiny when you wear it. But yeah, it's like no, these need to be reflective.
That's funny. Yeah, they're really neat. I mean, I think the more I look at them, the more they reveal. So we were at grad school, and then so after you went through that program, where'd you end up?
I stayed in Chicago and was working for another designer, and then I started my own line. I made a lot of work for several years after grad school, and then I started the jewelry company like 6 years ago, and I was like, okay, I have to like slow down on something. So instead I started doing these like little, I didn't have time to work on like bigger projects, so I actually started making these really tiny books. I don't know, just like sign up for a zine fest every year and be like, okay, well I don't have time to do anything bigger. So my like one art project for this year will be like, I make these like 3 little tiny books about climate change. It's just like one image, and then it folds up and like fits into this little tiny book. But yeah, and then I started the jewelry company, and I was like focusing all my energy on that. So
does it feel like a compulsion, creativity, like making objects, like it's something that like you have to do?
No, but it was nice to try to paint because I hadn't done it in a long time. And I mean, I made paintings for like 3 years before, or like 2 years before I showed anyone anything. And so like I think I started with that one and made some other objects to go with it. But it's not, I mean, I always want to do it, and it's relaxing, and I like trying to like solve a problem and like figure out how to finish it.
Yeah.
But I think lately I've also been feeling like I don't want to make too many things. Because there's just so many things in the world.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know. Just been trying to be careful and be choosy.
Right.
About what I make.
Right.
And where I spend my time, I think.
Right. I mean, you're using recycled materials in your jewelry.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is a great start, but yet I also get what you're saying, like, you know, making art objects, making anything, it's like just putting more things in the world, and it's like, aren't there enough things in the world right now?
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like that a little bit, but then part of it is like, no, I'm not gonna like stop making things altogether. Like I still enjoy it, and I still really like, there are lots of objects that I like buy or like people make, and then I wanted to bring them into my home, and they like give me a lot of joy, so yeah, I'm not gonna stop. But I think I'm just trying to be really choosy.
Yeah.
About what I make, and then like if I make it, like if I don't like it, can I fix it? Like with the paintings, can I just put another layer of paint on it?
Right.
Because that's a harder thing to recycle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I often wonder about myself whether I could, be doing a job or not make things. It's you hear people that say like, oh, if I don't make art, I'll die, or I have to. I listen to stand-up comedy a lot, and a lot of those comedians will say like, oh, if I don't do stand-up, I start feeling sick, or like I'm starting to get bottled up or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I resonate with that or not. I mean, I think I must, because like if over time like I just end up doing something, I have a hard time staying still, but yet I don't know if it feels quite that intense to me. I don't know. Do you experience that?
Well, I mean, like I want to spend my free time reading or writing or painting or taking pictures or I want to be either like engaging with culture and like seeing art or reading things or seeing things, or like taking it home and thinking about it and making it myself. Like that's what I want to do on the weekends.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And then, also go in the forest a little bit and like, hang out with the mountains, but.
Right. But when you go in the mountains, you like to take pictures of them and blog about it as well.
Yes.
Right. So that becomes a whole other project. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this response thing. It's like, I don't know, like art is so much about like, for me anyway, responding to my experience.
Yeah.
And kind of like, I don't know, maybe wanting to have a shared experience in a way, like showing somebody else like, hey, this was my experience, right? And having that relationship, and having that be a response as well, right? The viewer kind of responding to it in some way.
Yeah, for sure.
So you started doing your own jewelry line like 6 years ago. What do you feel like, did you experience any like hurdles to doing that? Is it just something that you were just like, I'm just going to do this and just started doing it? Do you like, if I know there's probably a lot of people out there that are like wanting to do that as well. Like how do you start doing that?
I mean, just start. But I mean, I definitely like, I took classes and like, I also made jewelry for a while before I tried to sell it anywhere. So
you put a lot of hours in before showing it.
Yeah, like I knew how to make a lot of things and construct a lot of things. I also like bought a ton of like jewelry books that like have a lot of like really practical how-tos, and so things that I didn't know how to do, I would like read about it or like watch YouTube videos because there are so many. And I think I also looked at work and also like I also partly started it, or I was making jewelry that I like wanted to wear, so it was also like partly thinking about that. But I would say if you can start, like don't start with gold if you don't have to. Like I'm allergic to brass, so like I was like I can't work in like bronze or brass or like start off that way and just like figure out like work on the design end. So I was also one of the reasons I wanted to start was to make I was starting to get more requests for wedding bands, so I made it legit so I could get business accounts with a lot of the companies that like you can get 100% recycled metal from. And one thing that's really nice today versus like 6 years ago is that it's a lot easier to get recycled metals because more people are asking for it. More of the suppliers are doing that. They're being more transparent about where things come from. So it is easier to find stuff. It's still hard to find things like chain. Like there's very limited options in the recycled chain department. But
you mentioned like making jewelry for yourself. Like one of the things that I feel like I'm coming into is just like being as honest as possible about what I like. And I think that that's like the easiest way to like just get into your own authentic style, right?
Yeah. Like, well, when I decided that I was going to make, I thought about buying a wedding band from someone else, but then I was like, I'm too picky. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, I made an entire collection so that I could decide what wedding band I wanted to wear.
That's awesome.
So I was like, well, I can pick, I mean, like, I'm gonna, you know, the ones that I don't like, I'll add to the collection, or like, you know, the ones that I like, but won't, not the ones I don't like, the ones that I like, but like, I don't want to wear every day, like, you know, I still like them and would wear them, but I was like, it wasn't the right thing.
That's great.
But yeah, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted, so I was like, I'm gonna make some rings and like live with them for a while and wear them around. Because I also like, I work with my hands all the time, so I tend to like things that are a lot simpler, like don't have prong settings, like things that are like flush, or I do a lot of flush setting, and then, or like where like the stone is like inset, like so there's nothing like sticking up too high.
Yeah.
So it gets caught. But
yeah, and I think that that's a tricky thing, you know, just going back to like, you know, looking internally for that guidance, you know, of what we're making, versus like, you know, I guess on the other extreme, just doing something because somebody wants to buy it, you know, and doing it that way. I worked in a gallery for a while where it was pretty much all that kind of artwork, and I think it was a really good experience to have that, to see what happens and to see how unhappy artists can be when they're financially successful and making the same thing over and over again that they don't want to be making. You know, I think it's a really tricky thing, just living in this world where we have to find ways to make a living, and, you know, but also like, I keep telling people, like, if I don't show work in the gallery they don't care about, I'm gonna have to close the doors. If I don't make enough money, I'm gonna have to close the doors. Right? And so like maintaining that balance is a constant thing for me. Do you find that that's an issue? Do you find that that's a conversation that you're having a lot?
Yeah, well, for a while I kept everything really separate. I had a jewelry website and I had an art website, and that was it. And then I was like, I'm never going to be able to make anything that's not jewelry if I can't figure out how to integrate them somehow. And so that was like a project of like a couple of years ago. I did like, for a while I had a landing page, and then you could choose which website you wanted to go to. So I was also like telling people who were coming to me for jewelry that I also do this other thing. And then I was like, I can't deal with two websites. So I like tried to combine it, and I've been sort of like working on an edit of that, like sort of a little bit more every year or so, just like trying to like clarify it. And I think on the one hand, I probably will turn away some jewelry sales for that, because I'm not like, when you come to my website, you're gonna see, like, you can read the blog, or you can look at jewelry, or you can look at photos, or you can look at art, and there's a lot to look at, but it's not like an immediate landing page that's like trying to sell you something. And that's more my personal taste, because I don't really like to be sold to. I just like want to find the thing that I like. And so just trying to balance like how I talk about the kind of work that I make has been sort of like a struggle, but then also I feel like it's in some ways like makes it interesting, and like I get a lot of like notes when people place orders, like, I love your website, or like, I really love reading the things that you're writing, and like that kind of thing. And that makes that like, so when I get that, I'm like, oh great, okay, good, this is working. Like, because I want to be able to make this work and have a couple different ways of accessing it. And I mean, like, that's partly why I like also made books, because books you can sell for like $3 or $8 or something. And then I've tried to keep like some of the jewelry stuff like really affordably priced, because like it also gets really expensive when you're talking about gold and diamonds. But yeah, I don't know. It's also, I also feel like in some ways it's maybe too much information. So I'm always like struggling like with the website. I'm like, okay, I'm doing a lot of things. Like, I must be very confusing, so I've tried to explain it. And like just be clear so it's easy to understand.
Yeah. No, I think that's important to consider too. Yeah, and I think, you know, I think it just comes back to like authenticity, and like you're gonna draw people that resonate with what you do.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that I think about all the time in the gallery. It's like the people that come in there that resonate with it, like make my day. You know, if somebody comes in and is like, wow, this is like, I haven't seen anything like this in Santa Fe yet. Thank you. You know, it's just like, you know, and of course not everybody who comes in says that, right? Some people come in for 10 seconds and then walk out the door.
Yeah.
But like, am I trying to be all things to all people? Or am I trying to just put out what feels right to me, and whoever resonates with that is going to resonate with it?
Well, people are coming to you because they like your like edit in the store.
Yeah.
And like the work that you're showing and the group of things. And so the more that people know about that, then like the more they'll come to you and be like, okay, I think I can find this kind of thing that I'm thinking about there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that was probably one of my main sort of hurdles in making artwork, is thinking about the response, thinking how others are going to respond to it, rather than like what's coming through, you know. And doing this gallery is really teaching me how to stay closer to what's coming through. You know, I certainly have to respond, right, because there's the financial aspect too.
Yeah.
You know, so having that dance, but still it's really helping me to like, it's like kind of like the rudder, right? It's like guiding me back into like, oh, when I actually pay attention to and listen to the whatever it is that's like my own unique aesthetic, it's working, you know. So yeah, I feel like that's what this job is teaching me, you know.
Yeah.
And certainly I'm sure like making jewelry that you want to wear keeps you sort of attuned, keeps your compass pointed towards that.
Yeah, I like kind of hit a wall last month. I was like,
yeah, what was that like?
I was just like, I haven't like discontinued anything in forever. And I was like, I don't even know how many pieces are in the collection. And I was like, I don't have enough time to make all of these things. So I just sort of went through and was like, okay, I'm not doing mass wholesale. I'm not doing like giant trade shows where like I really need a collection that has like 300 pieces in it. It's like one person, it's just me.
Yeah.
I make everything to order. I was like, there's no way I can like stock I have a few things that are like in stock, but it's like, I can't really stock the right pieces if I have like almost 300 pieces in the collection. So
yeah.
I basically like, my goal was to cut it in half, and it's like almost there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also weird because I'm like, oh, but I still like that.
Yeah.
Like some of them were really easy to be like, okay, yeah, I don't want to make that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it. I don't want to make it. I don't need to wear it. I don't want to make it. And then some pieces I also discontinued, and I was like, maybe I will bring that back later with like, if I like tweak it in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was like, I need to also make it manageable.
Yeah.
And keep it fun, because I like really, I mean, I like working with my hands, so it's like, it's nice to have like a day at the bench where like I'm working on stuff that I want to be making, and it's like, it's fun. But then there are always days where like everything goes wrong, and break like 500 drill bits and like lose diamonds on the floor. And
yeah, you don't want to like get an order and like, oh, I have to make this again.
Yeah. Although sometimes I'm like, wait, really? This has been in the collection for so many years, and then nobody bought it for 3, and now this year everybody wants this one piece. I don't understand.
That's funny. How many pieces do you think there are now? Carry it down.
Like 125.
Wow. That sounds like a lot to me.
I know, right? I mean, okay, but that also like includes like some rings, like make one ring and then you can get, there's a couple of options for a stone, or there's like a band that you can get in 4 different widths. but yeah, it's still a lot of pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also try to have samples of a lot. I mean, I don't have samples of every single piece because sometimes it's just like too many. But yeah, I really like rings, and since I make a lot of wedding bands, it's nice to have like kind of a big range.
Sure. For
that.
Yeah.
And so I also decided it was fine. I don't have to make I can just make rings. Or it could be like, so like it's mostly rings. Yeah. And then there are still like my favorites and the bracelets and earrings and necklaces. But it was like, I've never pretended to, like those more than rings. So and I like making rings more. I mean, I know they're more complicated because of the sizing, but I don't know. I've just always liked making them. Yeah.
It's funny how like when you tell somebody like when they come in, oh, it doesn't fit, and you're like, oh, we can resize it. They're like, nah.
I know.
It's just like it's like almost a no-go automatic if it doesn't fit right off the bat. It's a trip.
Yep. I know.
Yeah. I don't know. That makes me think of just like what happens when we choose one thing and like we're automatically not choosing a billion other things. And I think as somebody who, and it sounds like you're the same, is interested in a lot of things, like that's really hard to like know that by like picking one path or like by even if it's just for a while, right? There's a billion other things you're not doing.
Yep. Yeah.
That's so that sort of paring down with your jewelry kind of reminded me of that, right?
Yeah. I also like, I totally, like I'd clean my house so that then I can have like the next, like I'll clean the studio or clean my house so that I can like have a weekend day where like I can read and think. Like I just do better if I've like gotten like stuff that's like distracting me out of the way. So, but I'd never like thought about doing that for the actual collection. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. Yeah. So. Yeah. It's hard in the studio because like things are useful. It's like really hard to get rid of tools and art supplies. I can like edit my clothing. I can edit like everything else in the house and like keep it to like a respectable amount of things. Yeah. It's really hard in the studio. Yeah.
I could use that someday.
I know. Yeah. That paint is still good.
Right. Yeah. My wife Kara has a studio, and it's the same way. It's like there's drawers of just like this little square inch of fabric, or like like a paint tube that has like just like a little tiny bit of paint in it. It's like, are you gonna use that really?
Yeah. Well, one way to do that, to take care of it, is to move across the country. So I definitely, that was like the only way I really got rid of stuff. Yeah. And like studio stuff and artwork. So.
How did you end up here in Santa Fe?
My wife's work is here. She's basically like finishing up her PhD. She's doing field work here in northwestern New Mexico.
Field work in?
Anthropology.
Yeah,
so she's looking at the oil and gas industry, like jurisdiction.
So does that involve like actual hands-on like dig type stuff, or?
No, like it's a lot of archival research, a lot of like talking to people and like going to meetings and like following what's going on in New Mexico, because there's been a lot of shifts with the new administration. And
like
she drives across New Mexico like once a week. So she's just driving. Yeah.
Well, I know there's a lot of people talking about Chaco. Right?
Yeah, that's what she works on.
Okay, so that's what
so like so like in the San Juan Basin, the Four Corners region, like the methane cloud that's above the region, and she's also been looking at like they're trying to get the buffer of no drilling around Chaco. Yeah, she'll be more eloquent at explaining her project than I am.
Right, that'd be like.
Though I have learned a lot about this in the last couple of years. Yeah. But yeah, I lived in Chicago for 16 years, and I was like tearing my hair out at the end. I was like, I like moved to Philly on a whim like once, and then I ended up moving back to Chicago, and I went to grad school there. And so I was like, I'm not going to move unless I have a reason or like a job or like something, because it'll just make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
So by then I was like, yeah, I gotta go. Let's go.
What was driving you nuts?
The lake was nice, and the city is really, like there's a really great arts community, which is why I stayed for as long as I did.
Mm-hmm.
But like I grew up on the ocean and like had the mountains weren't as tall in New Hampshire and like Maine, but like had pretty easy access to like getting to the ocean or like getting to a forest or just getting out. And in Chicago, it's like you can drive an hour and a half and you're still not out of the city.
Yeah.
And so mostly I just wanted like a change and to be able to have more easy access of like getting out of the city, which is Santa Fe is perfect.
Totally.
It's like, oh my God, 20 minutes, you can be on a mountain in the forest. Or if you go in the other direction for like an hour, you're in Abiquiu. It's awesome.
It really is. I was in Houston for 12 years before this, and same situation. You can't get out of the city.
That's true. Houston has a good art scene.
It does, yeah.
I can see how you'd stay there for a while. I almost moved there. I thought about moving there, but...
Yeah. Up until recently, it was really affordable.
Yeah.
To live there and like have a warehouse and a studio and like make it work. The prices have gone up a lot. A lot of my friends are being pushed out of the city. But yeah, there's a great art scene there for sure. Cool. So one thing that I always ask is if there's like a piece of art or an art experience, or could even be a class, that sticks in your mind as like a transformative experience for you, that like either changed the way that you thought about art or pushed you in a different direction, or was just like when you think about an impactful art experience, what was it?
I think I have a couple, but the biggest one is, and this is the reason I actually moved back to Chicago from Philadelphia. In 2007, I worked on this. Have you heard of the Art Shanty project in Minneapolis?
The Art
Shanty? You know how they have like ice houses on lakes and in that part of the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a project in Minneapolis that's been going on since, I first heard about it in 2006, but so before then it's still going on. But basically like every year, every other year, a bunch of artists apply and then do like, and basically put together an art shanty, and then you get a permit, and then it's basically like a little art village on a lake in Minneapolis. And so I moved back and worked on this project with my good friends Charlie Vince and A. Prestonman and Alana Percher. And so essentially we decided to make it's awesome. So Charlie's an architect, so he was like really good at that stuff. A and I both like did a lot of like sculpture and like pretty good at building things. And Alana's a physicist, but is also a really great artist, and like I've basically collaborated with all of them in multiple ways. And so it was just a really fun project, and we sort of like all got to use our own skills. But we basically made like a fiber art shanty, and it was called the Soft Shop, and we like spent like months scrounging recycled materials and like built it in this warehouse in like 7 pieces. It was 7-sided, and built it so we could reconstruct it on the lake. And then like building it was super fun, and then just being part of such a bit, it was a much bigger project than I'd ever done before. So that's sort of why I think it's more transformative. And then once we got it up there and installed, we were like, so A and Alana stayed up there for the whole time, and then Charlie and I would commute for the weekends, and just like set up shop for the whole weekend, and like put on like every single article of clothing that I had brought, because you're outside in the winter in Minneapolis for 12 hours. But it was really awesome to see all of the different kinds of projects. I've gone back up in subsequent years. I haven't done another shanty, but like people get really creative with the small buildings, and then they all have really interesting uses, and you just get to meet so many people.
And how many are on the lake at any given time?
I think it's between like 10 and 20 in the group. The numbers may be different now. And then there's also like fishing shanties, shacks like on the other side. There's usually like one side of the lake. And they started moving, they did it on one lake for a number of years, and then they started moving it around to different lakes so that it was sort of accessible to other people.
That's cool.
But they set up shuttles from the Walker to like on the weekends.
Oh, that's cool. And so was it the process of collaborating that for you was so impactful on the piece? Or?
Yeah, being able to like build something big and use like all different kinds of materials and like methods and have it be a workshop and have there be like there were various like workshops that would have it on the inside, and then like and the structure like changed because we basically like would make stuff and then install it on the inside, and so it was just like an opportunity to do something a lot bigger and see how larger projects get done. And I haven't done anything to that scale since then, but it's definitely like nice to be like, okay, if you just like plan or recruit help from certain people, like you can kind of do anything.
Yeah. Have you done much collaboration since?
I haven't in the last couple of years, but I've collaborated with A number of times. I did another project with A and Charlie where we built like some platforms that was also sort of like making spaces that have different usability. And then I actually started collaborating with my wife. And I'll show you the book, but we put together a book. Our honeymoon was an artist recidency in Montana.
Wow.
It was part honeymoon, part residency, but we like applied with this project together, and it's like lived in a Airstream trailer in Bozeman for a week and like worked on writing this project together.
How cool.
Sort of looking at like different layers, like atmosphere and air and underneath the ground, which is like what Sonia's looking at, and also like I look at that in different ways in my own work, and combining photography and writing. And we're hoping to do like a bigger sculpture, but right now it's just sketches. And then we're like working on a tarot deck, but we still haven't finished all the cards.
Nice. And you all work well together in that way?
Yeah, it's just been really hard to carve out the time. So like that's like my biggest sort of issue, is it's just like gotten so much harder to carve out the time because I'm also doing more things.
Right.
So I'm talking about this because then we'll hopefully carve out more time and then we'll get this done.
Well, now it's on the record.
I know, and it's on the record, so I have to do it, right? I have to finish this project.
Gotta do it. That's great.
Yeah, so if I keep talking about stuff, then it's like, if I say it, then I'm accountable for it, and then I'll like finish these projects.
Somebody's going to ask you were talking about that project. Where's that?
I know. It's been 2 years. What's going on?
Right. Cool. That's so awesome. I love the idea of doing a residency as a honeymoon.
Yeah.
Like where you're actually working on something together.
We did part 2 in Oaxaca at Poco a Poco.
Ah, yes. Great.
Yeah, which was awesome.
Yeah.
We just like sat in the courtyard and like did our watercolor cards. It was great.
Nice. Cool. So the show here at Show Pony, how long is it up?
Till August 30th.
August 30th.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be releasing after that. I could actually rearrange things. We'll see. Do you have any other things coming up? I think we'll probably do a closing, and Naomi is going to do some like a ceremony of like spells for the climate crisis in here. For the closing?
Maybe not on the closing. I think it'll be on the 24th. We're
24th.
Still figuring out the date, but yeah. It's
Cool.
a nice way of like overlapping interests and getting some performance in here.
Right. Cool. Well, I'll get the details from you and put that in the intro as well, because I'll rearrange it so that this will be released while the show's still up.
If you can, it would be awesome.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah,
it's always good to have the kind of simultaneous things. Cool. Great. Anything else?
Oh, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Did I like laugh for 2 hours? I feel like it's...
No.
Okay.
I think it's just been an hour.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
shiver.